So I found out the mindset of the well, at least one of the Christian doctors in Blackburn, and this is how it goes with these fetal cell lines. So had not an argument as such as a debate with this doctor over the ingredients to the jabs. But I'm not talking about jabs now. I'm talking about medications in general. So at the moment they are moving away from the chemical medications in hospital, although they're still obviously giving a lot of them at the minute. But the fact is they're moving away from that area, and they're using medications that are called biological medications. And this is what I'm talking about. So, as you know, we've been back and forth to the hospital with Bethany and to the doctor, and we're at a head-to-head with the hospital now because they want to use a biological medication on her called Infliximab. Now, this is a infusion that they put into children, and it's developed from human cell lines and from animal cell lines. So you've got human cell lines in there and you've got animal cell lines as well. What does that sound like? Sounds like Genesis all over, doesn't it? All over again. So these are the medications that they are beginning to bring in. Now this particular one, they say, is safe because they've used it for 11 years. So they've used something for 11 years and then they consider it safe to stick into many children across the UK and across goodness knows how many other countries. 11 years. That's nothing, you know. What's long-term effect is that going to have on them for a start? But that's by the by. The argument or the debate was about the use of fetal cell lines in this stuff, and what does God think about that? And so we got onto this subject on the phone first of all, and this particular doctor, who confesses or professes to be a Christian, said that she didn't think there was anything wrong with using these medications because what happened was a long time ago, and it was something like 40 years ago, so it doesn't really matter now because it was 40 years ago. And although it might have been wrong in the beginning, she reckons that good's come out of it now. So it sort of, I suppose in her own mind, cancels it out somewhat. Now how she must have arrived at that, I don't know. All I can think of is that she has made another God out of her own imagination, because the God I know, the biblical God, it's not okay with him. And it doesn't matter how much time has passed. That's irrelevant. It's still not right with him, because time doesn't factor with God. He's outside of time anyway. Now let me just parallel this with maybe something else. Say for instance that a guy or a woman, let's not be, you know, it could be either, but there is only man or woman, by the way, murdered somebody 50 years ago. Say they murdered a child 50 years ago, And time passes and they never really caught the person. And just say 50 years passed, and then they get a sort of, let's say they know who it is, and without a shadow of a doubt they found out who did it. Do you think for 1 second that the police would say, hang on a minute though, this was 50 years ago, so it really doesn't matter anymore because so much time's passed between then and now, and yeah, of course it was wrong in the beginning, but actually this person's going around doing good now. We know them well, and yeah, they are a pillar of the community, and what happened then, was then, but the fact is they're doing good, so it's irrelevant what happened 50 years ago. You and I know full well that that would never happen. They would have them hauled up before the court and jury before you could, say whatever. They would, she would be dragged into court, a jury would be in place, and they would stand before a judge, and the crime that they committed 50 years ago would still be a crime. It would be no less important than it was 50 years ago, and that person would not get away with it if they could be proven without a shadow of a doubt of being guilty or confessed that they were guilty. They would be imprisoned, or if they're in another country, might even end up on death row. That's what would happen. It's irrelevant how much time has passed in between. And so to say that these babies, that organs and tissue was harvested from them over 40 years ago, so it's a long time ago, so it really doesn't matter. That's irrelevant before God. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. The fact is, it's wrong. And if you know the God of the Bible, and you know who he is, and you know his holiness, that he's just, that he demands, that he punishes evil, then you would know that this is wrong. Developing these medications from human cell lines and from animal cell lines and having goodness knows what else in them is an abomination before a holy God. And I can honestly say that is the truth, regardless of what she might think. That is, knowing the God of the Bible, and you can go and read the Bible and you'll see who God is if you do that. If you read the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Old Testament is not irrelevant. He is God. The fact that Jesus has paid the price for those who run to him in repentance, that means that they are not going to be punished for the crimes that they've done, and they're going to be cleansed and purified, But that, you can't apply that to this, because this is a development of drugs, and it's not about individuals. It's about what they are doing, what they are using, and who they've sacrificed to do that. And they've sacrificed innocent children. Those children never got a chance to take a breath of life, and yet they were people. They were, people, souls before God. The fact that they were in the womb is irrelevant. They were people. Being inside the womb or outside the womb is irrelevant. They were individuals. So this stuff does not wash with a holy God. And how she's arrived to her conclusion, I do not know. The only thing I can think of is that she doesn't know who God is. She has formed another Jesus, and of a God with her own imagination. And the biblical one, she's rejected, because if she really embraced everything that the Old Testament and New Testament says about God and who he is, she couldn't possibly arrive at the conclusions that she has over this stuff. So God doesn't forgive outside of Christ. What's outside of Christ is still to be condemned and judged, and all of the evils that we've done with these cell lines, they're going to be judged. Everybody that's been involved in the abortions of those babies, everybody that's been involved with the development of these treatments, these new drugs, they're going to be judged by God. And that is the truth. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. They will stand before God, and he will pass judgment on all of this. So just be warned, if you end up in hospital, research what they're sticking in you, because now you really do have to. Now they're using these biological drugs and moving away from the old drugs. You really need to be aware of what they're giving you, what these things have in them, because we're in perilous times, and God, he's not happy with this stuff, and that's the absolute truth of it.